Back in session.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for offering Carter Terenzini the appointment of town administrator for a term of 1 year in accordance with the contract submitted.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, second. Any other discussion concerning Mr. Tenzini as the town administrator for the town of Templeton? I see none. Kim?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Mr.
Welcome aboard, Carter.
I'm not giving back the bottle of scotch the employees gave me at the going away party.
Understood.
I believe that paves the way to move forward with the management fellow position.
That's correct.
And if it would be your pleasure, I'd like to introduce the candidate and say a few things about him
That'd be fantastic, please.
and how this is going to work. Eric, would you mind standing up, please?
Yes.
Eric Pollitt is the survivor of an initial 16 applicants that came to us from 10 states. It was narrowed to 3 over 3 interviews, to 3 today, who went through first a 1-hour tour and interview with the police and fire chief, then a 1-hour conversation with all of the department heads. We had 1 or 2, unfortunately, Mr. Mayo had made a prior commitment, but for the most part, I think just about everybody was there. They then went through a 1-hour interview with a team of 3 local management professionals. Mr. Hickey came down from Winchendon. Ms. Heather Budrowitz came over from Ashburnham. And my former town fellow in another community, who is the town administrator for Swansea, New Hampshire, and knows my quirks and quandaries, and would have a good bit of insight into who we might work together with well. They did that. The candidates then spent an hour with me, and they were required to submit 3 homework assignments, 1 explaining why the world they would want to do this kind of job. A second one analyzing a problem, proposing a solution, and a third one another writing sample. So Eric has a Master's of Public Administration from Kentucky's Martin School of Public Policy and Administration. And I'm so glad that there's going to be 1 other person in the building that says y'all.
Understood.
And before that, he earned his bachelor's degree in political science from Virginia Commonwealth University. It's been his desire to be in local government on a general management level, and in preparation for that, he recently completed 9 months of service as the chief financial officer for Shelbyville, Kentucky, and a 6-month stint as city intern in Crestview Hills, Kentucky, where he was tasked with preparing marketing materials and doing analysis for economic development. He is a member of the International City and County Managers Association, and I think that together this team, which will bring you 1 1/2 persons at roughly the cost of 1 full-time administrator, will bring you a blend of seasoned, grizzled administrator and young, energetic talent. And I look forward to working with him. I know he looks forward to working with the staff. And we all look forward to him reporting on October 30. Eric, would you like to say a few things about it? Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence?
Absolutely, thank you. Good, Eric.
I'd like to thank you for inviting me up here. It's quite a hike. And I think I'm ready for this position. I think y'all are looking for someone young, someone that's going to bring some energy, that's going to fight for the town. And I'm here to work under Carter. Carter was telling me over multiple conversations that he has groomed people throughout his professional career, and I hope to be next on that list.
Excellent.
Great.
Well, we're glad to have you, Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Anything else to add, Mr. Tanzini?
Nothing. I think that, puts this long-standing vacancy to rest for a while. Whether you stay with this model or this proves succession planning for the community, if all things go well, I think that this could put you on a good glide path forward, either with the combined model or succession model.
Understood. Great, thank you so much. All right, let's moving on to the 2018 meeting calendar. Got a chance to take a peek at that?
Oh, sorry, stealing
It's
your
okay.
paperwork. Alrighty. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Carter, this is almost identical to the draft that we had received before, right? This is just in a more fancy formatting. What are the?
Yeah, we prepared two for you. One, which came out of the workshop, which spoke of sticking with Monday nights for your meeting night and sliding any Monday holidays to Wednesday. The second one follows some conversations of almost a year ago now, in which it was talked of moving your meeting night to Wednesdays because there would be less disruption from Monday holidays. It gave the staff a little more time on Thursday, even, a Friday crunch if need be, to get everything posted, get packets out to you. Gave you a little more time to look at the packets. And it reduced your time because you could sign the warrants, the reconciliations, and the similar documents on Wednesday night when you came in for the meeting. So it's really your pleasure, whichever way you want to go, and we will then build the budget calendar around whatever you choose to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think that it would be a better idea for the Board of Selectmen to meet on Wednesdays automatically. If by doing so on Wednesdays, we would have the ability to review and sign warrants on that day. We would have the ability to avoid any holidays and just have a set Wednesday recurring plan. And it kind of gives us that in the middle of the work week where we can kind of adjust to what's been happening and kind of move forward with that. Instead of setting the guideline forward, we can pass down to the town administrator on that Wednesday kind of the plan for the following week and have him adjust to that. And that's all subject to Carter if he's able to do that. And I know the other issue that comes out of that is that there would be the town hall hours. I know we stay late Mondays, but I don't think that would have any effect on the selectmen meeting on Wednesdays. And so I would say with that, maybe table this till next week when we can get maybe another member of the board in here to make that decision to meet on Wednesdays. John, Doug, do you have anything to say about that for a Wednesday meeting day?
Again, the concerns I would have with the Wednesday meeting, I like the fact that, we would be able to do all of the business we need to at one time. But, how does that really affect the staff? And again, the hours, because we've been talking about now we're going to extend, continue Monday as the extended day. Part of the whole extended hours was that the staff could come to the meeting should need be.
Yep.
Without expending, more personal time. So, I'm not against a Wednesday, but I do think if we're gonna make that change, we really need to give it thought, and that the whole board should really be involved in that decision.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I have no qualms with Wednesday either. And I think the Wednesday really shouldn't affect the day-to-day operational hours of the full-time staff, as long as the town administrator manages his staff on day-to-day operations. It should not have to bring, and like you said, Doug, obviously, you're right, we did enforce, so I did impose the meetings on Monday and change the hours for the the late day to be Monday in case staff had to be here to present to us or et cetera. Most of the directorates or most of the directors, they're all salary employees anyway, so unfortunately, as a salary employee, they know what they need to do. So, I mean, I would vote to, or at least let Carter make the day-to-day operational decision on the hours of operation, Monday through Friday, with implementing to us. But as far as changing the meeting, the Board of Selectmen meeting to Wednesday, I have no issue with that at all. And we can table that until Monday, when we talk more about that. And then obviously, when we get more staff, we can actually do a projected vote.
Okay, that
Okay.
sounds good to table. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have no issue with tabling it.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure I understand. So item H and
Yes.
I2 will be discussed in the workshop Monday evening.
That's
Is
correct.
that my understanding?
Yes.
And I,
Yeah, I too.
oh, I too, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
I get it.
I got you. I know.
I was seeing I also.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're trying to develop a flow where items that go to workshop are on your agenda unless it's something that we work through, kind of brainstorming. And then when they come back from workshop, it's clear that they've been vetted and they're ripe for action.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. All right, so going to I1, financial policies from Collins Center. If I get a chance to go through those again. There should be 2 copies in there. One which displays the, all the changes that were made by all board members here, with all your inputs between, Diane, Doug, you as well. We all made our 2 cents worth of inputs. All those changes happened, and then obviously there's a draft dated September 8th with the other revisions. So, were we able to get another clean copy, Carter? Like a clean copy?
The second copy, the draft of October 4, for the most part,
Is the
except
cleanest?
for some highlighting,
Right,
is the clean.
okay,
Just when it was converted from the markup to a clean, I think that the yellows popped back in for whatever reason.
that's right, I figured as much. I just wanted to make sure that was the case.
These have everything that the board discussed. Outside of the board, you may recall there was, in the original draft, a number of changes in the capital, and then there was a freestanding alternate.
Right.
And I worked that through Doug, and he reviewed that before we plugged in. I think, as I recall, he was fairly comfortable with the revisions.
Right.
Then there were some other things in here that came from when Michael and I worked our way through it word by word, including the change with respect to the distribution of free cash.
Yeah, I see that.
That formula,
Mhm.
and that formula came out of the discussion we had on free cash, that memo that we gave you in the workshop. I will say that this will be a bit of a living document. We have the dishonored electronic payments and the bad check policy. We have some other things, so we're gonna have to work out, just I think, little bit more of a procedures section. And some of this is aspirational, and UMass said, well, look, rather than saying on this one, you're gonna do it by 2019, and this one, but is, just start doing your best and recognize that some of it's kind of aspirational in these first few years.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The scope of these financial policies, I know there's,
What page?
just in general,
Okay.
there's line item states that, exercising all powers provided to it under law. In this financial policy, what scope does this go to? This incorporates all enterprise funds, this incorporates all town hall, but it excludes Templeton Light and Water, correct? That's the only thing?
Templeton Light is a completely separate statute.
Okay.
There's an interesting interpretation of the water portion. I'm not sure it's worth belaboring it,
Okay.
given our good relationship with them.
Right.
Mhm.
There is a difference of opinion certainly between the other enterprise fund, which is much more clearly
Mhm.
simply a department of the town, and then there's the general fund.
But by approving this document, this is effectively stating that this paperwork is in effect for all entities that would be,
We removed, there were notations in various locations where we removed references to the light plant because they are completely separate
Right.
statutorily.
Mhm. Understood.
Nothing you can do.
Yep.
Act, I think it's 93 of 2013, I'd certainly enjoy an opportunity to have a spirited discussion of that one, but right now, the town has generally accepted that that has granted them the same basic powers,
Okay.
given they're working effectively and we have a good relationship with them. I'm not sure it's worth going backwards on. So the light and water plant are not referenced in this policy.
Certainly.
Only yourselves, the town side, and your two enterprise funds, sewer and the cable.
Right, excellent. If I were to make a motion to approve these policies, would it be prudent to say, to exclude the water department out of this?
I think you can just say as presented.
Okay,
I would ask that the minutes reflect my comment and recognition by the board
Yep.
that there are areas of these that are and will be aspirational for a
Yes.
few years here.
certainly. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the proposed financial management policies for the town of Templeton. Draft number October 4th, 2017, with Board of Selectmen and CT revisions.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second, any further discussion? I see none. Cam?
Yes.
Doug? Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Ladies and gentlemen, another milestone just happened. For the first time, we now have policies that cover our financial processes here for the town of Templeton. That has never been in place before. Great job, everybody. And great job to the Collins Institute in the, and utilization of that grant, which was a great use in development of these policies. And I think it's gonna be going in the right direction from this point forward. Okay, talk about the creation of the Economic Development Initiative Committee, the EDIC. Mr. Eaton?
Thank you for your time.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you all. It's nice to be back. So, you have the PowerPoint that we workshopped.
Yep, sorry, I
Last
do
week.
apologize, I missed that, I had a family event, emergency type thing I had to do, so I apologize.
I call that, Mr. Chairman, life happens,
It does.
right? And so with the three other members of the Board of Selectmen who were here, basically, I think I want to defer to Carter and Doug who are here. If I miss anything, please throw a snowball at me or something and make sure we cover a topic. But we do have this PowerPoint. This is focused only on the request of the present Economic Development Committee of the Board of Selectmen to create an economic development and industrial corporation and subsequently appoint a board of 7. I can run through the presentation at reasonable speed, fast or slow, but I'll go at a certain speed. If you need me to speed up or slow down, I will. If you go to the page 3, sorry, the page numbers are a little small, but lower right-hand corner of the page number. So slide 3. Basically what we're talking about is setting up some administrative infrastructure for the community to create an entity that would focus on fostering economic development for the creation and retention of jobs, for the construction of buildings, capital investments in buildings, real estate, and equipment. which can be taxed by the community. This is a pretty typical organization, whether it's a redevelopment authority or an EDIC. The Economic Development Committee recommends the adoption of the EDIC. The page 3 talks about a variety of some of the things that, quite frankly, the private sector is looking at. How is a town set up? I think if everybody was asked in the room how you would define business friendliness, you'd get a variety of definitions. But, you know, to me, business friendliness is, from the private sector's point of view, is the community set up to receive us, can communicate with us, can they help us with our costs? Get up and running, get production lines going, hire people, and sell widgets. There's just an explanation of Athol, Orange, Templeton, Winchendon. You can see a couple of blank boxes there. I won't go into a lot of detail. We don't have an EDIC. We don't have streamlining permitting in place. We're hoping to do that with your help at the May town meeting. The third row down, tax agreement negotiation approval process. The town has one, however, other towns have done more. We're hoping to do that at the May town meeting also. You have town administration. Our community economic development, we have no staff that do that. These other communities, even though that they are towns, do. Grant writing capacity is limited in the town. If you want to skip to page 5, I just want to highlight, well, where did this come from? Well, officially, for the first time since 1968, the town of Templeton has a master plan. It was led by the planning board, written by my colleagues at the Montezuma Regional Planning Commission on behalf of the town of Templeton. Out of that master plan that was adopted in March of this year by the planning board, there are 3 bulleted recommendations that are highlighted on page 5. Recommendation number 1, maintain/create an economic development entity. That's what we're talking about tonight. That's what this summary is about. Recommendation 4 talks about the streamlining permitting procedures. And the third bullet for recommendation 5 of 9, infrastructure improvements. Buried somewhere in the plan, it does talk about TIFs and special assessments, which is a part of making tax agreements under the expedited permitting statute and creation of priority development sites. So why you do this, it's in your plan. It's now in your adopted plan to do these things and try to get up to speed. And again, create that administrative infrastructure to say to the business community that we're ready to receive you and help you grow in the town of Templeton. Page 6, we talk about some benefits for creating the entity. You'd have an entity that's focusing on marketing, assists with commercial industrial land development where and when appropriate. Ideally, there are hundreds of acres, especially around exit 20 at the interchange of Baldwinville Road and Route 2, that are available where there are no building constraints. No protected species that are there, and they're prime for commercial and real estate and industrial real estate opportunities. We want to provide a conduit communication for the real estate and the companies to identify with a local entity whose sole purpose is to deal with economic development and talk to that entity and with its partners, everything from light and water to town administration to all the permitting entities as well. There are economic development successes, and they are, if you stay with a mental map for me from Littleton or Devons down to the Orange area, we sit on the vast majority of acreage that is prime for commercial industrial development. And there's a lot that we can do just by communicating, just by taking a volunteer group of the 5 that we've had, the 7 that you would have under the EDIC, and to continue to communicate with them, do some marketing and outreach and have some conversations. The statutory reference, for those of you that like to read state statutes as a sedative or otherwise, they're fun reading. It's statutory reference, Mass General Law, Chapter 121C. That's on the bottom of page 6, and that's a segue to the rest, the balance of this pages 8 through. I think it's 13. So these are copy and paste right out of the state statute summarized. If I copy and pasted the whole state statute, this document would be about 30 or 40 pages long. It would be a Word document, but we tried to summarize. Basically, the entity itself, the Board of Selectmen, creates or establishes the existence of an economic development and industrial corporation under the relevant state statute. And then under Section 3, you appoint the 7 members. Second bullet and then the sub-bullets 1 through 5, the square bullets, at least one member experienced in industrial development, at least one member in financial matters, at least one member in real estate matters, at least one in muni government, and then one member representative of LMIs, or low mod income persons. And you reach out to public entities that deal with LMI folks, and you ask them to nominate people who are from the community. The appointing municipality, the Board of Selectmen designates one of the 7 members as chairman and the other as vice chairman. If you'll notice in the statute and the bullets, there isn't a bullet for 6 and 7. The statute's silent on 6 and 7. Consider that a community at large member or something like that if you wish to do so. Flipping to page 9, members don't get paid. That's essentially the essence of bullet 1. The second bullet is just legalese. It's a public body corporate, and I think with a workshop session, Carter very well pointed out to think of a housing authority. I think that was a great analogy. I think that was what you said, Carter. I think that's a great analogy. Basically, you have appointment powers, and then the entity runs and reports back. Actually, I can't see it right now, but you will find later that the entity has to report at least once a year to its appointing authority. So you get an annual report. I just want to take a quick aside by basically saying you're creating an entity that's going to do a lot of things, and it's going to learn, and it's not going to work in a vacuum. And I think that's just the bottom line. That's the most important thing. Doug had a great question about the borrowing of funds. The EDIC, bluntly, with the people that want to be involved, are not going to go out and say, well, let's borrow money and go do stuff. No, it just doesn't make any sense. First of all, we have no collateral. We don't even know how to borrow. If we talked to a bank about borrowing somebody, they'd say, well, you know, we're going to ask for you to communicate with your appointing authority and get a guarantee or something. So we're not even there yet. We're talking about really networking with the private sector to encourage development. Let's see, page 10, I can move on. If there are any questions, please just hit the pause button. Some of this is boring. I mean, you adopt a seal, fine, that's pretty standard. The second bullet that has the dash, basically the italicized versions are right out of the state statute. So for instance, this says appoint and at the pleasure of the remove a clerk, treasurer, other officers of the corporation as they may deem necessary and may determine their duties. Bottom line, we need to work with the existing staff. Work with the treasurer, work with the town accountant, work with the town auditor. We did check before we had this conversation. I'm sorry, it was April, May, or June. I did some research for the other communities, Gardner, Fitchburg, Athol, Orange, Winchendon, and basically, you know, your annual auditing company basically would audit the books of the EDIC. So it becomes, you know, you're going to create this housing authority-like entity. It's an economic development authority. But basically, we're part of you, and we work as a team to get things done. Page 11, pages, I should say, 11 through 13, there's an A through a U, listed items. It adopts bylaws, can make contracts, receive and accept federal money, the Commonwealth municipality grants, loans, or advances. This is where I live in the day job, where we obtain federal and state funds on behalf of communities to do things in planning and community and in economic development. So this entity could go out and apply for grants, get them in, and then do good things. Some of those good things, I mean, before we invest in a blade of grass anywhere, and I don't know if we'd ever do that, we need to understand our market. We need a market research study. Actually, Mass Development just got back to me today, so I've set up a meeting with them, and I think it's 2 Tuesdays from today. I'm going to go meet with them and say, so we applied to you for some services already. We need some market research. We need some stuff. They said no to the market research, but they came back and said, well, you've got this land around exit 20. What if we gave you some civil engineering and showed you maybe a schematic plan of what you want to do? And I said, great. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. There's only volunteer time involved in this. It's not writing checks to anybody. It's not even receiving grants yet. Page 12, yes, the other statutory authorities: borrow money, issue revenue bonds, invest any funds, provide advisory technical assistance, prepare for plans, drawings, design specifications. So the entities that have been around a while, the redevelopment authorities of Fitchburg, Gardner, Winchendon redevelopment, even Athol and Orange, EDICs, they're further along. They've either had land donated to them that was suitable for economic development. They received grants and funds. They received some free services, maybe from a mass development or another entity. And they've done things, quite frankly, the vast majority of the development that we're all familiar with at Exit 18 off of Route 2, the North Quabbin Commons or Market Basque development as we more know it, was done a lot through networking, and it started with a $169 payment, I believe, to send the chairman of the EDIC to Boston for a shopping center convention to meet the developers and the businesses that create, build shopping centers.
Right.
That's how they connected with the Market Basket, and the rest was a lot of lunches and a lot of meetings and a lot of phone calls. But it was the private sector that was encouraged by the EDIC and Athol to do it. They also used a DIF, a Development Incentive Financing, under the TIF statute we're talking about to make tax agreement deals, and that funded the water system to get extended up to that property. 13 just is kind of a round out of other eligible actions that the EDIC can do. It could basically, if it get up to speed in this community, and I think that's a long way off. It can basically, if it gets funds through grants or loans or gifts or whatever, it can buy land, it can develop land, and it can sell parcels after it pulls in infrastructure off of a main road like a Baldwinville Road onto what's green space now, but it's zoned for commercial industrial. You pull in the road, you pull in the drainage, you pull in the sidewalk, you pull in the water, you pull in the sewer, and you pull in the fiber optic that companies want. It's on the street at Baldwinville Road, and you pull it in, ideally with grants, and then you carve it up and you basically save 5 to 10 acres, and then you start marketing the property.
Okay.
But that's not tomorrow. This is creating an entity that could do that someday, that may never, but it certainly needs to encourage economic development in the community. We want to retain jobs, we want to create jobs. What we're learning, we did another focus group today for a contract we're doing, and we have reasonably low unemployment if you look at U3 numbers, but if you look at U6 numbers for unemployment, which is all the people who are not counted, who have been downsized and so on, that unemployment rate's a lot higher. The jobs we're creating are service and retail at the lower end. You know, my 1/5 opinion on the Economic Development Committee is we need widget-making jobs. We need industrial jobs. They're out there, and we can create opportunities for businesses to do that. Page 14 is basically the end. It's just a reminder that the Economic Development Committee basically, we did take 3 unanimous votes respectfully requesting the Board of Selectmen to create the EDIC, which you have under your authority under the statute, as Carter pointed out to me. And then the other 2 issues are subject to town meeting. So we would ask you to consider for the May town meeting to put a warrant article on that we would prepare on behalf of the community. I need Carter's help with some of the language. And now the new fellow will pull him in. I heard economic development marketing, so we may want to borrow Eric. But identification of priority development sites for future tax increment financing, development incentive financing, and special assessments. Those are the tax agreements that you have between the community, the municipality, subject to town meeting approval in the future, to basically get its tax breaks, to incentivize companies to come in, and you're giving a break on future taxes until they ramp up and then start paying full after 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. The last point is creation of a streamlining permitting system for large-scale and industrial development projects. Large-scale, 50,000 square feet or more. We're not talking about if a McDonald's or a Cumberland's wants to go in at Exit 20 or another commercial industrial. No, this is for larger plants. So those are warrant article requests for May of 18. That completes the summary of the request to create the EDIC.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Eaton, I appreciate it. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Eaton?
No, I appreciate all the time that you and the committee have put into getting to this together. I mean, it's the real direction we need to go, and it's got a lot of potential for us. So thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to identify Steve Castle. He's here tonight. I know he's here for cable, but he's a member of the committee. Richard Curtis is a member of our committee. Kirk Machete, and John Kaplis. Don't tell me. I didn't forget you, John.
I understand.
I mean, how can I forget you in that beautiful purple shirt and tie?
It's fuchsia.
It's
so,
fuchsia.
Let's get it right.
Real men wear fuchsia.
That's correct.
That's right.
That's correct.
I will get out of here unless there are any
Do
Q&A.
you have any questions?
Yeah, actually. I figured you would. I think this is great work. It's definitely needed in Templeton. I think that modern day communities need to reach out to the private sector. It's something that's not common. I mean, it is common now, but, I mean, you look back 50 years ago, people would just slap up a factory because they said it looked good as a spot. Now it's really about, you know, what's the financial study of getting a piece of property? What is that? The tax breaks, the incentives. That's modern economies now. I think this is a great idea. My current concern is I actually have a few, that this committee here needs to be staffed by individuals who truly understand this, and they also have the best interests at heart for Templeton. I mean, you have some people who want to pave Templeton and put up a bunch of industrial factories. You have a whole other community that's dedicated to open space preservation. This opens the doors for that balance. And the people that serve on this committee really need to have that background. You know, it says a finance background. It needs to have, you know, somebody familiar with municipal government. The current concerns that I have are some members that would be benefiting from serving on this. Whereas, you know, if you have a stake in town and you want to zone something, there's a benefit to be had. So appointments on that, and the other concern is that these people are obviously vetted and qualified. I would say to the board that if we are to appoint anybody to this committee, as we are the appointing authority, they need to show up in person and kind of present resumes and things like that, so we have their knowledge on hand. This cannot be something that we're appointing people to because we feel like, you know, they would be a good candidate. We need to have quantitative evidence to say these people are vetted, they have the credentials. My other concern is that we have the warrant articles, the identification of priority development sites for future tax increment financing, development incentive financing, and special assessments between Templeton and private sector entities for the purpose of creating new jobs. And creation of streamlining permitting services for large-scale commercial and industrial development projects. Those are great. But when we start talking about tax break incentives, and we start to grant that authority, are we passing the authority to the EDIC?
No.
Or are we saying that if you guys had something that this company wants to move in, we would put that at a town vote to say, we're gonna grant these people a?
So the warrant articles, so if I can, you have two great topics. Can I go over
Yeah,
reverse
absolutely,
order?
take them away, I just figured I'd throw
Thank you,
them out there.
Selectman Forrest. Okay, so the reality is that setting up the EDIC with a proper team of 7 people is very important, and I'll end on that. But the statutes related to streamlining permitting, what basically happens is, and we have this in-house at my job shop,
Yep.
okay? We have a streamlining permitting guidebook that we've written several times, and I say we as an entity. One of my colleagues writes those religiously. He's written a half a dozen or so over the last 10 years. And that information is available. But within that guidebook, it basically says that you create a streamlining permitting committee or a permitting board, and it basically it plucks one person from each board or commission that's involved with permitting, land development permitting. A member of the Concom, a member of the Planning Board, a member of the Board of Health. Help me out.
The ZBA.
I think ZBA can be on there. I'd have to revisit the state statute to see the eligibility and members. And then staff who would support those people are basically would staff this committee. Let's say you end up with a committee of 5 or 7 people from a cross-section of these land permitting entities in town. They're in charge. They look at the applications. We recommend in the permitting guidebook you identify a single point of contact. In every community, it's slightly different, but it basically comes down to the town administrator's office, and if they have a town planner, it's the town planner. Someone that can work 9 to 5 and deal with consultants, contractors 9 to 5. Sometimes it's a building inspector or a combo, but you have a SPOC, a single point of contact. You have the super permitting board, and the EDIC is not involved.
Okay.
The EDIC is a separate entity. We want to set up with good people to go market and help facilitate the development of land for job creation and retention.
So there's a
Buildings and tax
separation and segregation.
Yeah,
of
there's
duties.
just nothing involved, there's just nothing related. The issues of the 2 warrant articles and the third item to request you to create an EDIC and then appoint 7 members, it's just that those are 3 things that the ED committee's been working on. But the EDIC has no authority and not even a seat on the other 2.
Okay.
The tax increment financing. So what happens there is that we would recommend, I don't see this a lot, but from the EDIC's point of view, to put on my day job hat as a planner, we strongly recommend that you have a committee, people involved in finance. You might provide one member of the EDIC a chair, but I'd recommend that it be ex officio, non-voting.
Right.
So if you have questions from the voting members. Let's say you have treasurer or accountant, town administrator's office, you know, a member of the Board of Selectmen, a member of the Board of Assessors, and then the town assessor be ex officio, a town administrator be ex officio. So you have those folks involved in the negotiation of the deals, essentially.
Okay.
Subject to the approval of the town meeting. The priority development sites, basically you create a map. And I should have brought in its own map, I apologize, I didn't. But it's basically, as we would draft the article for the town meeting with Carter and Eric's help, we would say, you have to identify priority development sites on which 50,000 square foot buildings can land. And that's basically the area in commercial industrial A, commercial industrial B, you know, essentially the interchange of Baldwin Road at exit 20 and Route 2, Route 2 and 202 at exit 19. And there may be other sites. But the members of the Economic Development Committee aren't going to write that warrant article in a vacuum. We want to go out and reach out to the planning board members and other land permitting entities and say, okay, where do you think we should, based on our zoning, which we've never had until 10 years ago, we were zoningless. We were the 351st community to get zoning a decade ago. So now we've narrowed down, and I just want to touch on that for another one of your issues about having land development for commercial industrial for those appropriate uses within the zones. Because you're right, it was Wild West zoning here before, and you could put a metals processing plant next to a house before 10 years ago. And quite frankly, that's crazy. So now we have zoning, a zoning bylaw. And the Economic Development Committee members, the EDIC folks, would work within that. And so we want to make sure that you understand, when I referred to about 500 acres available at exit 20, that's subtracting out, I forget the acronym, but it's basically an endangered species list. You know, that's factoring that out. That's over here. So from the people I've been working with the Economic Development Committee, I can tell you that they definitely are very interested in having appropriate development in appropriate areas. I would end by saying on your first item, you essentially were talking about conflict of interest and
Yes.
people being too involved. You are the appointing authority. So I would urge you strongly to make sure that folks don't have conflict. And that's all I really can say about that. I think that's a very, very valid point. And we shouldn't have conflicts. We should be doing it for virtually altruistic goals. Those are great questions, and hopefully I answered them.
No, absolutely.
Okay,
And
thank you.
my last current question, with the EDC now and the change to the EDIC, where we would have, say, this staffed 7-member board, I know your primary goal and plan is to do X. And I don't mean to lump everything that you said into X plan, but I'll
That's
keep,
okay.
I'll keep
That's
it
fair.
as Plan X.
Sure.
We'll say 10 years down the road, you know, we now have established that there's, you know, say there's a building off Route 2, you know, we've gone forward, we're now in the point where we're buying and selling bonds, and you know, we're at that point where we're now a full-fledged EDIC. I don't know if it will happen in 10 years, but we'll say it does.
Sure.
What exactly is there to curb this entity's power? I mean, are there certain things, like, I know you guys are buying and investing and kind of developing sites that are zoned for. Now, when we have the zoning board, they can obviously say that, you know, this is something that you guys can't do or you can do. I mean, what are the checks and balances on the EDIC, so you're not just paving Templeton?
So really, you're the check and balance. As
Okay.
the appointing authority, I'm going to be blunt, you 5 make sure that we do our job within, on the EDIC, within the bylaws that have to be created.
Okay.
Okay, we have to stick to those bylaws that still need to be written. You create the EDIC, you appoint 7, and the 7 come up with bylaws, ideally within 6 months. I'm gonna go back to the comment I made roughly 10 minutes ago, not in a vacuum. This is very new to Templeton, and
Absolutely.
I get it. And 1,000 years ago, sitting on your side of the table, and at roughly the same time, sitting on the advisory committee, you don't do stuff in any New England community in a vacuum. And certainly now, having learned and come up through the ranks, you know, I get it. I need to be in constant contact, the members of the EDIC do, with town administration and leadership, because you're our bosses. And you remove us if we're not following the bylaws. You remove us for failure to perform. You remove us if we've gone too far out of our bounds.
Okay, I didn't know if this was, the reason why I asked these questions, because I did reach out to the community development representative, actually. I think that's what it is, the Building and Community Development, that is pretty much the oversight for EDIC in Massachusetts.
Department of Housing and Community
Yes,
Development.
that's the
DHCD,
part,
yes, yes, sir.
I actually spoke to her about a month ago. And I didn't know, based on that conversation, if we create this entity, is this now just a rogue entity in Templeton that?
No.
So it is curbed by, obviously by bylaws, but it is curbed by our
Right.
appointing authority as
We're
well.
appointing
And then
authority.
You are
Open
also
meeting
in
law.
scope with zoning laws.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And if we think about this commonsensically, first of all, there's we're a public entity, right?
Mm-hmm.
You create an EDIC under you, it's a public entity. If you follow open meeting law, public records law, procurement, conflict of interest law, the four biggies, I
Yep.
call those, if you're a local official in Massachusetts and you don't know those four, have a working knowledge, then resign.
Yep.
Okay? So we have to follow the law, the statutes. We have to follow the local bylaws. We have to follow the zoning bylaw and the bylaws that we create. That I'm gonna be blunt. I'm only gonna speak on my behalf, and I'm gonna fill a little bit on John. Let's say, so let's say you create this entity. I'll ask to be on. Okay, I know that. I think you know that. Let's say John's on also. Okay, and then you fill up 5 other slots. You know, John, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, who would probably fill one of those at-large positions probably best, would be a great person to be at those public meetings, to have his ears on, or
But would
her
he be
ears,
able
as
to
it is.
serve on the EDIC being a member of the appointing authority? I don't think you would be able to.
I didn't see anything in the statute prohibiting that.
Well, that's another
But I defer
interesting
to the lawyers.
discussion.
Yeah,
But we have slated the development of a bylaw that can only be adopted at the annual town meeting.
Mhm.
That would be a global fix
For all of that.
for this issue.
I got you.
Because you can resolve that by having a bylaw that'll either, in adopting the bylaw, capital planning committee, selectmen are specifically named, so, or we can have a generic bylaw that can fix
All of it.
adaptive, reuse of the Baldwinville School, those kinds of things.
Okay, not to deter from your conversation, but.
but no, that's a
I
great
think
point.
we
I was
can
not
fix
aware of
that.
this. This is helpful. This is helpful. So you have a bylaw fix that we weren't aware of, so assuming that happens, and maybe that wasn't the best example, but we have to follow the open meeting law, so we have to post meetings publicly, post the minutes, get them to Holly for posting agendas and so on and so forth. So the entity doesn't operate in a vacuum. I believe housing authorities post, and they have to follow open meeting law as well. So it's not like this entity is rogue. It can't be rogue by design of the statute, multiple statutes. The
Okay.
creation, the statutory authority to create the entity, plus the 4 statutes that I mentioned, plus some local bylaws that provide, I think they provide enough checks and balances. And if you have a town council or someone else that says, well, wait a minute, what about this? Then we fix it, to your example.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm purely asking these questions, I'm not here nor there, I'm actually for it. But I think some folks get, when they hear the term corporation, especially when you're in zoning and construction and
Yeah.
buying and selling bonds and doing real estate business in town, can give it a sense of air saying, well, they're gonna pave Templeton. So I'm asking these questions for the fact that there is checks and balances,
Right.
there's segregation of duties.
Yes.
And that we are going to, when this is established, that we will be in good form and standing within the community, so you guys are able to do your work.
Right. I'll say publicly that the EDC members and the EDIC, I'm sure, have no desire to pave Templeton. Only certainly appropriated
You may
zoned
not,
areas.
maybe somebody who
Absolutely
gets
not.
on there could be a big business developer for town of Templeton, if we ever
Yeah.
get one of those.
If
but-
you ever appoint somebody like that, then I think you get back to the conflict of interest issue. If they've got a stake, I think the word was used,
Absolutely.
Selectmen Boards,
Right.
then I think you really need to look at that application for a slot on the EDIC and say, is this an appropriate appointment?
Mhm.
And that's up to the 5 of you. But these are great questions for now versus we created this thing and now what do we do with it? So I'd rather have these, what I call, tougher discussions now before. This is exactly what we're all looking for. We want this discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Everything else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm all set with questions.
Okay. Doug, do
Thank
you have
you,
any
Mr.
questions?
No, I had all my questions the other night, and I'm good.
And I'll get out of from here. I know you had a long agenda.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
I appreciate it.
Do we want to make a motion to create the
That's up to you.
EDIC?
I'll entertain that. That's
All
up.
right. I would make a motion that we create the Economic Development Initiative Committee.
All right,
Would that refer to the charge and composition that's in your package as well?
Yeah,
means with the
that would
7
be based
people?
on- Yeah, I mean, that's part of the statute, the 7 people, so, and that they have those particular requirements. So, yeah, maybe I should read, I didn't read all of this detail.
hold on, this isn't a stale second, give me let the hamster wheel turn real quick.
You got it.
It pretty much mirrors the statute.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, so the motion would be that we create the committee based on the,
So, okay, yeah. Okay,
charge and
this-
composition
Yep.
document.
Okay. I have a
This
motion.
actually looks like a boilerplate of some sort.
It is.
Okay,
Yeah, it's just cut and played right out of the statute itself.
okay, excellent. And maybe the mission statement needs a little bit revamping. That's a weak mission statement you guys got. Maybe you can do something about that in
We'll
the
work on
future.
that. We'll work
Okay.
on that.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion concerning the development? I see none. Cam?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Again, another landmark history made tonight in development of the Economics Development Initiative Committee. I think, moving forward, Industrial Corporation, excuse me. Great job, Mr. Eaton, I appreciate it. And again, moving forward, we expect a lot out of you. And obviously, when we get the names as far as the appointments, working with Holly and the town administrator, so we can start doing some appointments to this, making sure that we do track down quality and qualified individuals to assist in this development, so we can assist in the progress of moving Templeton, hopefully into the 20th century, moving forward. All right, thank you so much. You all set?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
if I may, I just want to echo that statement that I made prior, that any of these appointments to this body, we need to vet in terms of a resume, qualifications, certifications, any experience that would make this relevant, because now we have a statute to follow, which is one member from this category, one member from this category.
Mhm.
So that's something that we really need to look at and make sure we're appointing the right people in tune with what Templeton needs and desires.
I think we're all on the same page with that. Okay, great job. Moving on to the Cable Public Access Policy, Cable Advisory Committee. Steve, how are you? I'm great, good to see you.
Taking time this evening. So, the Cable TV Advisory Committee Thursday evening voted to bring you public access policies and a revamp of our video guidelines and recording policies.
Mhm.
We would like to open up TCTV for public access. Right now, you're running a TV station that is educational and government-based. You
Right.
can have what's called PEG, P for public, education, and government. We only do 2 of the 3, and we'd like to open it up so that other people can use our equipment and come in and create shows that they want to do. So say somebody wants to do a gardening show or a home improvement show. They can take out the cameras, we'll teach them how to use it, they have to be certified by us in using these things.
Okay.
And take a little show and we'll help them put it on the air. So the whole idea behind PEG stations like this is, when cable TV first started, they realized that, hey, how can people have a voice in this? People can send letters to the editor of a newspaper, or you can go on social media, do whatever you want, but what about TV? And that's what this was created for. So the idea all along when we were negotiating the contract with Comcast was to move ahead with public access, and we feel that we're ready to do it now on a limited basis because we don't have our own studio facilities. So there's only so much that we can do, but one of the things that I would do is go around to all the nonprofit groups and show them, hey, it's easy to set up a tripod and a camera, push the red button, you're rolling, here's how to move the camera, and see if they want to produce something.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will build a demand for more of a permanent studio space.
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
go ahead.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I know Gardner, I actually know one of the people who does a lot of the video for Gardner. And I mean, they have things where they're reading children's books and things like that during, a certain time period. I think that's a fantastic idea. I've always been a fan of Mr. Rogers and his PBS specials, and I think that's, public broadcasting is something that's absolutely needed for, and I commend you. That's awesome.
Thanks. And actually, Jackie Prime and I have been talking about doing the same thing with the library.
Really?
And they have a story hour, and we're just trying to coordinate to see if we can get an intern from the school to help out with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's some issues with that, you can't show the kids. You can show the backs of their heads, and then you have to have a camera on the book.
Yep.
Or record it later, but we can do that, and so.
Right. That's an excellent idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do that, and some other things, last year, we had an intern working with us, and we have somebody at the school who's helping us with school committee meetings, and she knows how to use the camera, but we have to stay there and babysit the equipment, so she should just be able to sign that out. Last year at the Halloween, the haunted house they have at the Historical Society, so the intern came up and he had his friend there, and he's gonna be our intern this year. And I
Works out
said,
well.
here's the big boy camera, because they just use iPads at the school. Go to the haunted house, they had a ball, and all I had to do was stand there and worry about the camera. But, and they did a little show, and they had a great time with it, and that's how you build the interest in it. And I
Absolutely.
think right now, we've got a nice TV station for what we have, and people watch it for the meetings, and people watch, Sean and I go out, we tape all the festivals and that, and we work up shows, and people say, that's nice, but, I think we need to get more interest rolling in it.
I think you're absolutely right. That's an incredible idea.
And we worked up those guidelines, and also included something that Carter gave us on appeals process in there as well.
We just need approval for this, correct? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve, let me find the title of this, the public access policies and procedures for TCTV as presented.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion second, any other discussion? I see none, Kim?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you very much.
Good
You're
job.
welcome.
Thank you.
Actions on workshop, I don't think we have anything,
We don't tonight, Mr. Chairman.
thank you.
This is two workshop. I think, though, that the discussion on the,
Town hall hours,
on the
the town hall
the
hours.
town hall hours, right,
Yep.
move those two things, but also
Yes.
on the bylaw change for town meeting, we need to have that discussion.
Okay.
At the last workshop, I passed out a document with the intent of, the changes I'd like to propose.
Okay,
I know you weren't here, so you probably didn't get a copy of it.
I did not.
I'll make sure you get one.
Thank you.
But we probably should have that discussion at the workshop.
Yes, we
Um,
will,
in
we'll have a draft
preparation of a
warrant
vote,
for you in your packages
Right.
this week.
And that's our main topic, Monday, one of our main things.
It's the main topic, and then we hope to have a little bit of time
It's
to get to some of these other matters.
Understood, all right, thank you. Any old business? See none. Public comment? Anything from the public? No? Excellent. Anything you guys need to add from the staff?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tanzini. Gentlemen, anything? No?
I don't think so.
Anything from the Economic Development Committee?
I've said enough.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to adjourn this session.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? See none? Kim?
Abstain.
Doug?
Yes.
I vote yes as well.